In psalm after psalm, we hear of the direction of prayer, as we do in Psalm 122, the place to which the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, the assembly of Israel, to praise the name of the Lord. In the age of Isaiah, concerning Judah and Jerusalem, the mountain was as up as one could get, the highest place, the place where one was closest to the heavens. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For us here in the 21st century, the mountains are no longer as up as we can get. We routinely soar above them in airplanes and cross oceans and continents for holidays. Even our Earth's atmosphere isn't the limit to how far up we can go. We have the technology and the ability to launch ourselves into the very heavens themselves. I wonder what Isaiah and his kin would think of such celestial travel. Could they even grasp the concept? Or that what even we thought impossible, to land on the moon, walk on its surface, was proven possible by the Apollo space missions of the late 1960s and 70s. Or that an even more ambitious mission to use the moon as a platform to launch ourselves even higher into the heavens is currently underway. Just over a week ago, Artemis 1 was lofted into space, slingshot swung by rocket fuel and the gravity of the spinning Earth toward the moon spinning around us, where it will swing round to the dark side of the moon, arc another 40,000 miles further into space, collecting data for future missions all the way through, and return by gravity and grace, not to mention a crucial engine burn in order to leave the lunar orbit and splash down somewhere in the Pacific Ocean in a few weeks from now. Suffice to say that there is a good deal of waiting and anticipation amongst space nerds like me. How wonderful, though, that we have this moonshot before us as we enter into our great season of waiting and anticipation and preparation, Advent, in which we set out hopefully and in anticipation of the one who has already come and whose kingdom is not yet fulfilled, the chosen one come down from heaven, the Son of righteousness, around whom our lives orbit. Threaded throughout the readings assigned for this first Sunday in Advent is this theme of anticipation and preparation, expectation and readiness, concluding with that cautionary exclamation, "Be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour." As Christians, we must surely rejoice at this thought of our beloved's long-awaited return. Yet as I read Isaiah's words from our first lesson this morning, I do not feel much like rejoicing, nor can I agree with Paul's proclamation in his letter to the Romans that the night is far gone and that the day is near. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. How are we doing with that? A passing glance at the newspaper, a moment's listening at the radio or online makes it uncomfortably clear there are plenty still works of darkness about. Of course, Paul was writing of darkness metaphorically, but here in our northern latitude and at this point in our seasonal calendar, with its subtraction of daylight and its multiplying night, the darkness feels frighteningly real to me. There is an old story about a rabbi who once asked his students how one could recognize the time when night ends and day begins. "Is it when from a great distance you can tell a dog from a sheep?" one student asked. "No," said the rabbi. Then is it when from a great distance you can tell a date palm from a fig tree? Asked another. No, replied the rabbi. Then when is it? Asked the students. And the rabbi answered them, It is when you look into the face of any human creature and see your brother or sister there. Until then, night is still with us. Night is still with us as long as we remain comfortable with terms such as mutual deterrence and friendly fire. Night is still with us as long as we insist on being either red or blue. Night is still with us as long as families have to make a choice between keeping warm this winter and feeding their children. Night is still with us as long as we continue the folly of the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Night is still with us as long as friends out for a celebration are gunned down on the dance floor. Personally, I could not hear about the shootings at Club Q that left 5 people dead this past week and not think about those at Pulse Orlando 6 years ago that left 49 people dead, or about the continuing and increasing violence against LGBTQ plus people. Or about the Names Project, AIDS Memorial Quilt, and how many lives and memories are stitched into that unimaginable blanket, including that of my friend Garth, who in the last months of his life took to wearing a t-shirt depicting outer space, our whirling galaxy, the Milky Way. It is said that in space, no one can hear you scream. Sound waves need something to travel through to be heard, and space, being a kind of vacuum, remains eerily silent. Several astronauts in the early days of crewed spaceflight described this strange phenomenon. They would look out of the window and see their spacecraft's thrusters firing, but would be unable to hear anything. Beginning with Apollo 9 in 1969, NASA issued specially modified tape recorders to each astronaut in order to reduce the sense of isolation as well as to help record mission logs. A challenge was to prevent the tapes from unraveling in zero gravity or the machines themselves from floating away. But there was a designated person at NASA who essentially made a mixtape for each astronaut according to their musical taste. It's said that Apollo 11's Buzz Aldrin brought along the songs of Barbra Streisand and Lou Rawls. Apollo 14's mission transcripts are peppered with complaints from Commander Alan Shepard about crewmate Ed Mitchell's all-country music selections. And Apollo 17's Ron Evans chose to bring along some Christmas carols sung by his neighbors. Times change. Today's astronauts, of course, have a lot more technology at their disposal when it comes to listening to music. However, it still isn't hard to imagine the soundtrack to Artemis 1's unmanned mission being all Mel Torme all the time, its orbit literally and physically swinging on the moon. Meanwhile, here below, we wait. But the astronauts' specially modified tape recorders remind us that even as we wait and prepare, we can turn up the volume on what we know to be true. We can testify. We can amplify. Make known the thing that we are awaiting. For salvation is nearer to us now than when we became believers. The night is far gone. The day is near. Let us put on the armor of light. Remember our friend, the old rabbi. What if he was on to something? What if our teacher's return is not apocalyptic, not full of thunder and lightning and the quaking of the earth, but something much, much more mundane, something as simple and everyday and commonplace and miraculous as a shared look between two human creatures? And if we listen carefully, isn't that what Jesus is saying in today's gospel? That the end times are not end times, but now times. About that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing until the flood came. In other words, people were and will be simply living out their lives, going about the humdrum of their daily business when the kingdom of heaven arrives. A trip to the grocery store, a night out dancing with friends, a day just like any other day. The message in this message is that we ought not to be paying attention to some future endpoint, to some far-off, distant destination, but to the very present moment, to what we are doing right here, right now. That it isn't about us waiting for the return of God so much as it is about God waiting for us to finally get it. The hopes and fears of all the years, past, present, and future, all contained in a lowly manger and a rough-hewn cross. For the past several weeks, our lectionary has had us looking up, urging us to behold, believe, be here, beware, be present, be still. The already not yetness of Advent asks us to neither linger in the past nor rush ahead to Christmas, but to simply be here now. Really, they are meant to drive us back into the present with even deeper appreciation and stronger conviction for what really matters, and then to testify, amplify, just as we are, right now. In its looking back and looking forward at once, Advent is meant to direct our attention to the present moment and to be fully present, alert and awake to the signs of the kingdom breaking into our lives here and now. About that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. In other words, when the kingdom comes, it will find us just as we are, not as the people we are trying to become or have promised to be or wish we were, but the people we are, the families and friends we are, the neighbors we are, the congregation we are, even the country and the world that we are. The question becomes then, what is it that we are doing right here, right now? How are we loving God and each other? We may not know the hour, but we do know what to do. There is an important detail I left out when I mentioned the image on my friend's favorite t-shirt. In addition to the beautiful depiction of our galaxy spinning through interstellar darkness, there was also an arrow pointing to one tiny speck of light amongst the multitude of others that make up our galaxy. And it was captioned with the words, "You are here." It reminded me of that humbling line from the Psalms, "When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place. What is man that you are mindful of him?" It reminded me of just how far light can travel, how marvelous and expansive God's creation is. And I thought, too, of how even David, when he penned that beautiful psalm millennia ago, looked up and marveled at the grandeur and the greatness of God, and then testified, amplified it for generations to come. That is the picture and the thought I am bringing with me into Advent this year, and maybe you will too. Locating ourselves within God's great whirling creation and being here for each other, amplifying hope. Amen.